Eric Trump's caretaker, Lara Trump. She's taken over as co-chair of the RNC, the Republican National Committee. And her first order of business, the first thing she does, is get rid of the Minority Outreach Program. This is just shocking to me. This blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. No, not that she got rid of it, that they even had a Minority Outreach Program to begin with. I genuinely thought this was the extent of such a program.
Look at my African American over here.
Look at my African American.
Are you the greatest? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I thought that was the outreach.
Okay.
This episode will act as a companion piece to an episode I made like 3 weeks or a month ago. I don't know. About the death of the Republican Party.
Trump is the new Adolf.
Before we jump into this episode, I want to welcome all the new people to the channel. We have a great community. So like I've been telling you, don't be shy. Don't be shy to comment. We've been stuck in a terrible algorithm for way too long of just pulling in all the chuds. So finally, I think it's wearing off. I'm glad you're here. If you like these videos, make sure you upvote them. I think that helps us out with the algorithm. And if you're new here, after you watch the video, if you like it, make sure you subscribe. So let's get into it. Rona Romney. I think she can actually go by Romney again, since she got fired from her job. Rona left the Republican Party starving, emaciated. All that was left in the safe was 8 million in rubles, half a White Claw, not even the good flavor like the lime flavor, and an empty bottle of Botox. The RNC is in some desperate need of some TLC, but unfortunately, the wrong people are taking over. And when you start to realize that, you understand why people like Ken Buck are resigning early.
This place just keeps going downhill, and I don't need to spend my time here. We've taken impeachment and we've made it a social media issue as opposed to a constitutional concept. Mike Johnson's ability to talk me into staying here is going to be about as successful as his ability into talking me into unconstitutional impeachments.
So there you have it. Although I do feel like Ken missed a golden opportunity here to say, the buck stops here, cut. Ken Buck's people should have got in touch with my people, but I digress. Ken Buck went on to say that 5 more congressmen, 5 more Republican congressmen, are considering doing the same thing. This brings Moses Mike's majority, well, try saying that 5 times fast. This brings Moses Mike's majority down to only 2 people. He's basically a pipe bomber and a horny grandma away from giving the House over to Hakeem Jeffries. And I guess on some scale, it's admirable what Buck did. Shows a little bit of character. But honestly, if you're worried about the Constitution, it probably would have stopped at the Patriot Act, right? It probably would have stopped at taking kids from their parents at the border. It probably would have stopped on January 6th. And I'm not a big believer of better late than never. So I'll just say, it's fine. What Buck did was a stroke of genius. If they have a special election, Lauren Boebert can't participate in it unless she quits her current role in Congress, which still leaves them 1 down. This only increases the chances of Lori not having a job next year, and it increases the chance of OnlyFans getting another grandma account. But why does Buck here think 5 more people are considering this route? Well, minority outreach isn't the only thing that Lara Trump is cutting. Every single dollar the RNC is raising, every single dollar that's being sent to them is going to go straight into Trump's legal fund. Every dollar is going to go towards the 10 trials he has going on right now.
We have to raise a lot of money, and I have great news. I brought this up here today because I wanted everyone to know that already I have a check for the Republican National Committee for $100,000 that has been donated as of today.
$100,000
as of these nominations going through. Yeah,
Lara
we're starting
Trump
today,
has saved
folks.
the Republican Party, the RNC. Great job, Lara. You just raised enough to cover 0.005% of just Trump's rape trial. And yes, the Republican presidential nominee was found guilty by a jury to have raped someone. Now let's say you're a Republican in a purple district, a vulnerable district. All that NRA money, all that big oil money, all that Russian money, that's not going to be going to you anymore, Bubba. Sorry, something about bootstraps and not ordering lattes or avocado toast. I don't know. Whatever the stupid you guys used to say was. Because now you're part of Trump Inc. So go ahead and grab that golden dildo on your way out the door, and you can figure out what to do with it next. There was a Politico article just last month where they interviewed anonymously some of these Republicans. They all went to a retreat with Mike Johnson for the House to figure out strategy, right? And all these Republican congressmen ran to Politico because this retreat was supposed to be them figuring out strategy. It was supposed to be figuring out them dividing up the money. But all Mike Johnson spent the entire time doing was complaining about dwindling church goership, about the loss of Christianity in this country. I mean, just take 5 seconds to think how crazy that is. You're anxious about these upcoming elections. You're anxious about this money and how it's all going to Trump. And all this weirdo does with the ring he wears on his finger that symbolizes his daughter's virginity, with his phone backstage uploading the porn he watched that day to his son. All he does is complain that people aren't going to his church anymore. They're not buying his bullshit anymore. I mean, how would you feel if you went to a company retreat and you got there and all of a sudden it's some weirdo? Considering all that, my only question is, how is it only 5 congressmen? I mean, at this point, with them being forced to vote against their own border deal, that embarrassment, and then the Ukraine funding going through anyway, at this point, it would make sense for them to cross the aisle and start working with Democrats. But they can't do that because of a thing called right-wing welfare. And that's their jobs, right, that they have lined up after they're not congressmen anymore. I mean, how often's Ken Buck going to be on Fox News now? Write a tell-all book. So they don't want to jeopardize that. They don't want to actually have character. They just want to feign having character. Minority outreach. Down ballot candidates. The next thing on Lara Trump's chopping block, besides Eric's balls, the next thing on that chopping block is mail-in voting. Older voters skew to the Republican Party. Boomers, the silent generation, they skew that way. So the Republican Party, one of Rona's big pushes, was a mail-in voter effort. I mean, that actually makes sense to me. Cutting ways for seniors to vote and then going on TV and saying, don't even worry about voting.
We had that all set to go, but then we had a little election that went astray. So we have to be careful. You got to get out there and you got to watch those voters. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes. You got to watch election night. You know, it used to be election day, election night.
From a presidential candidate that lost by 7 million votes. That should not only set off a silent alarm, that should set off an alarm. That should set off the fire alarm in my house on fajita night. That's how loud that shit should be. If I was a cynical man, which I very much am, I would say that Trump's looking for another red mirage. Another excuse. Mail-in votes come late. The QAnons, your chuds, they get out there, they say, oh my God, suitcases full of ballots were coming from South America. Or whatever stupid shit they said last time. Without outreach, without down ballot, without a mail-in voter effort. Let me tell you what the Republicans are spending money on. Lawyers. Specifically lawyers focusing on election fraud. How completely and utterly predictable. This is the worst criminal organization in not just America's history. I'm going to have to say the world history. And I have to believe the only reason they're considering this, the only reason this would actually work, is just how horribly funded, how terrible American education has been for my entire lifetime. I mean, you don't even get to learn critical thinking until college. As little as we think of you MAGA morons, as stupid as we think you all are, Donald Trump thinks you're dumber than that by like 10 times. He would have to. Because the only way you could not see this coming from a mile away is if your head was completely and utterly up your own ass. And people like Steve Bannon, radicals, know exactly how to manipulate this base.
But this is what American moment is, and this is why I've been a huge supporter of this from day one, and this is why I come over and give the talks. Because there are not many people like the leadership of this organization. But more importantly, there's not many people like the young people that we're putting in on Capitol Hill into the committees, into the second Trump term. You can't just talk about deconstructing the administrative state. You have to do it. You have to take on the deep state. You have to do it. You have to be prepared to go to prison. I get prison sentences all over.
He's got prison sentences all over. The difference is Trump pardoned him. Trump didn't pardon any of those January 6ers. He had time to, and he didn't do it. I can't even imagine how low your self-esteem would be, how low your self-worth would be to do Steve Bannon's bidding at this point. You see, Donald Trump's Republican Party, Steve Bannon's Republican Party, is like everything else that Trump's ever been involved in, anything he's ever owned. It just doesn't work without corruption. I don't like it when other YouTubers make claims that something's going to happen and then it never happens and they never address it and they never say why it didn't happen. They just go on to make another claim. But I'm feeling a little cocky because I did get this one right in the video from like a month ago. So let me take advantage of that just for a second. Let me opine just for a second. I believe that Trump and the people around him see the coming storm. They see what's going to happen. The bottom is going to fall out from this Republican Party. When your party cuts everything that relies on getting more votes to win an election and puts all the money into lawyers and Steve Bannon telling you might have to go to jail for Trump, when there's that switch, it's never a good sign for where you're heading in a democracy, in a republic. The RNC's purpose, like the DNC, is to be a turnout machine. I mean, historically, that's its purpose. And when these purple districts that we've been talking about, when the congressmen in them start to feel this squeeze, right? The cutting of their budgets, that's campaign managers, that's ads, that's special events, you name it. When they start to realize that the RNC has become nothing but a TNC slush fund for legal bills, and you have Steve Bannon out there saying you're probably going to have to go to jail for this guy, they're not only going to be missing the Ken bucks, they're going to be missing those Trump bucks. Here's what you have to know about fascist movements. The circle's always getting smaller. It's by design, and it's why it's not, sustainable. And honestly, it really says something about the Republican base that they can't recognize the most obvious form of fascism I've ever seen, right? It's all about loyalty to one man, and it's top-down, constant loyalty tests. And in fascist regimes, the way Trump set things up, every person vying to be in that inner circle has to keep doing loyalty tests over and over. And so by design, the circle gets smaller and smaller. And once these congressmen find themselves far enough outside that circle, there's just no point anymore. And this is why I believe Ken Buck. You're so far outside the circle. You have no money to run. Women are going to set fire to the polls this year because they right now have less rights than their grandmas. Missouri's passing a law that if you're pregnant, you can't leave your husband, even if he's abusing you. Do you have any idea how batshit that is? They're trying to outdo Alabama. It's only a matter of time before Mississippi tries to top both of them. Trump, Mike Lee, all of them, they're all talking about cutting Social Security and Medicaid. These are programs we pay into our entire life. That money doesn't just sit and wait for you. I'm paying for the 65-year-olds now. And the deal is, when I'm that age, the younger generation pays into mine. You're just going to pull that rug out from underneath us? You're a Republican congressman. You're trying to perpetuate this idea of like a caricature of what a Republican was in like 1981. No money. You have all these social issues smacking you in the face. And you're just going to wait it out for 6 months, 7 months until you eventually lose with no money? Why? Republicans have a persecution complex, but they don't actually want any persecution. They don't actually want any pain. They just want to cry about, the imaginary stuff in their culture wars. I've learned this. I've learned this throughout my whole life. But Trump realizes that. His base love to feel like they're persecuted. And like I said, I'm telling you, and if it doesn't happen, I'll come back and I'll say I was wrong. I'm a dumbass. If the bottom doesn't fall out, I won't just pretend like I never said it would happen. But Trump's prepping for that. To have the red mirage again will reignite this persecution complex of the base, and we'll go through that same hell scenario again. And the scary thing is, I don't know how it will turn out this time. I don't know what they're planning to do. The only thing I know they're not planning to do is try to win by getting more votes. The Republican Party has won the popular vote once in the last 35 years. One time. They're very much a regional party, LARPing as a national one. And that fact has been masked by the Electoral College. I honestly believe they think this is their last shot. Trump knows it, Bannon knows it, the Christo-fascists that make up the base know it. And they are willing to sacrifice our republic. They are willing to sacrifice democracy for authoritarianism if it means they get to implement their idealism onto us. If you like content like this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all the new people. Tell me what you think in the comments. The Chud Report.
Look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.